What's good, y'all boys? It's your dog. Oh, shit. What's good, y'all boys? It's your boy, Boss. You know, we back again with another video. Comment, like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell, okay? Because I'll be dropping these videos like crazy. I need y'all to engage. You know what I'm saying? This video that we're about to watch is called Online Activism. What's the point? And I feel like it's going to be an interesting topic for me personally because I have activism experience. Activist experience, whatever. And we're in this era where motherfuckers like do that shit online and think they doing something, but really they're not doing shit. You feel me? Motherfuckers just go and post a picture on their story or a petition or a change.org link on their page and think they're doing something, they think they're helping the world, saving the world. And then they get mad if you're not doing the same thing. So, you know, let's see what they talking about, boy.
Once upon a time, the world was a dark and dreary place. But then the internet arrived, and the possibilities seemed endless. It would be the most democratic place on earth. Everyone would have a voice. The rise of social media represented a utopian vision of interconnectedness. And over the past decade, we've seen users from across the globe come together in pursuit of bettering the world, resulting in campaigns like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and Time's Up. But how much does it really matter? Can hashtags and memes actually change the world? And are we liking and retweeting our way to revolution, or just shouting into the void? Let's find out in this wisecrack edition on Online Activism. What's the point? Okay, before we go on, we want to thank this video sponsor, BetterHelp. If you've ever experienced
I'm not watching your advertisement.
Just generally felt overwhelmed lately, BetterHelp
there you go.
In today's activism,
Wait.
/wisecrack. Now, back to the show. To understand today's activism, we need to start with its history in America. Activism dates back to the colonies, where ministers used the pulpit to urge congregants to engage in charity and acts of service and to fight societal vices like alcohol. As the country expanded, formally structured associations popped up to help organize the organizing. Activities ranged from signing petitions and handing out pamphlets to holding bake sales and craft fairs. These activist groups would become crucial in winning many of the rights we have today. That's why we refer to the years of 1890 to 1920 as the
that's why I say, like, I don't feel like protests and rallies and shit, they're not, you know, for naught. They don't got no purpose, right? I'm not saying that they don't have a purpose. Especially back then without social media, they definitely did have a purpose. Now, I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Like, yeah, you should raise awareness about certain things that people don't know about, but everything just feels so commodified and, like, corporate almost. That's like, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like they're using it for the wrong reasons almost. You know what I mean? I don't know. Let me know if y'all get what I'm saying, bro.
Era. A time literally characterized by the fight for progressive government reforms in areas like labor rights, women's suffrage, and weeding out rampant government corruption. I also refer to the years 1890 to 1920 as the years where people mostly still just shit in holes in the ground because they didn't have plumbing. The following decades were defined more by economic depression and war than by activism, but people continued using the same methods. In the 1960s, activism shifted as movements began taking root in the university, where a ballooning number of middle-class students were learning from professors who questioned dominant ideologies. These youngsters used a combination of classic forms of organization and spontaneous word-of-mouth assemblies. Some even refused to participate in mainstream society, establishing places like communes where people shared labor and resources, and yes, sex partners. At the same time, major movements led by
that's the birth of the hippies, boy. The birth of the hippies, which coincidentally might be where the current progressive era that we're in originates from.
Color, like the civil rights movement, or organizing migrant farm workers, were using marches, boycotts, sit-ins, and strikes to achieve their goals, led by figureheads like MLK, Cesar Chavez, Malcolm X, and even young people like Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock Nine.
And Fred Hampton
gave face to the movement and used various forms of media to rally people to their causes. Television became a huge boon for activists. Americans all over
Martin Luther King was skinny, boy.
Saw peaceful protesters marching, chanting, and singing, only to then see them sprayed with hoses and attacked by dogs. These shocking images brought attention to society's ugly aspects and put pressure on the government to step in. These tactics would later be used to advocate for things like disability rights, environmentalism, and beyond. In the late 80s and 90s, activism got legal, specifically when it came to women's rights. People took to the courts to address issues like workplace sexual harassment. On the domestic front, women were fighting to get laws on the books about things like spousal rape. Throughout the history of in-person activism, there were significant risks to the people involved. Freedom riders were murdered. Kent State student protesters were killed by the National Guard. Striking workers were beaten by police. Many were arrested and people lost jobs and community standing. But despite these dangers, it was clear that organizing worked. The best way to threaten structures of power was to assemble the masses. But with the mainstream...
Facts. Because they can't hurt everybody. They can't kill all of us. We standing together, boy.
Of the internet, the way America did activism was about to shift. The first major internet-savvy political movement was led by the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico, a full-on revolutionary group with autonomous territory. No longer dependent on journalists to publicize their cause, these activists were able to rapidly dispatch information on internet hubs. In the 90s, activist campaigns used bulletin boards and email newsletters to bypass the traditional media. Success was mixed, as the internet was still new and not yet ubiquitous. It would take the popularity of social media to really get things cooking. That shift is typified by the Kony.
Bro, I remember this, bro. Kony 2012, the crazy African dude, bro.
2012 campaign. In case you missed it, 3 white dudes from Southern California started the charity Invisible Children and created a video campaign to raise awareness about Ugandan militant and leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony. Their ultimate goal was to get him arrested.
Look evil too, boy.
For his crimes, which included the conscription of Ugandan children into brutal militia service. The video received over 100 million views in a week, making it the then most watched video.
Damn. That's 2012, boy. That's when niggas are still jits, boy. Kony 2012, Rebecca Black Friday, Baby, Annoying Orange, David After This. I don't know what the fuck that is. Charlie bit me. That's crazy.
YouTube history. Kony 2012 went viral on Twitter and Facebook and led to viewing parties, flyering excursions, major celebrity support, and so many freaking stickers. If the goal was to make Kony famous, they were successful. But there was one major problem. Ugandans hadn't asked for this, and the video's content was outdated and oversimplified. It played to the West view of Africa as an unruly continent in need of Western saviors. And Uganda...
And listen... That's the thing about white liberals, okay? They have this savior complex. They feel like, okay, I'm privileged. I have to use my white privilege to help you because you can't help yourself and you need me to help you because I'm white and I'm privileged and I need to check my privilege and I need to help you because I'm a savior. Jesus was white. Like, it's like, nah, bruh, nah. Because plenty of times... that mindset, that ideal morphs into a feeling of superiority, right? It's like subtle, oh my gosh, it's like subtle white supremacy. Like, I feel like I'm better than you. I know better than you. And now listen to me to tell you why you're oppressed. Let's hear more about this, though, because I didn't know that the information was inaccurate.
Lonely Planet Guide had just listed as a top tourist destination suddenly saw its tourism industry tank. What's more,
Lord,
as a top tourist continent in need of Western saviors. And Uganda, which the Lonely Planet Guide had just listed as a top tourist destination, suddenly saw its tourism industry tank. What's more, Invisible Children was spending most of its money marketing to Americans rather than supporting efforts in Uganda. Oh, and there was the whole situation where one of the founders started jacking off in the streets of San Diego, which has been immortalized forever by South Park.
That's crazy. So all the money went to the marketing. They didn't even go to Ugandans. And it fucked up Ugandans' bread with the tourism. That's crazy.
I'm gonna go out jacking it in San Diego.
Fallout was swift, and Invisible Children went on defense. Kony was never arrested, though his army shrank, and by 2017, the Ugandan government deemed him no longer a threat. Still, rather than becoming a cautionary tale, Kony 2012 kind of became the gold star example of how to do activism on the internet. And alongside that came criticisms of the new practice, derisively dubbed clicktivism, or worse, slacktivism. To many...
Yeah, because it's not the same as being out in the streets really fighting for something that's tangible and real and facing consequences for it. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you do it online, everything is easy. There's no consequences, no threat to your livelihood. It's whatever. Ooh, I can share this. Ooh, post it. Ooh, let me post a black square on my page. Woo! Woo, let me post this. Woo! Done. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not even... It's nothing, bro. It's nothing, bro.
Clicktivism looked pretty impotent, unlike the invisible children guy who did not look impotent in the streets of San Diego. Some argue that people on the internet don't actually do anything about the causes they post about, but merely rake in satisfaction and clout from appearing to be activists, even if they're uninformed or not actually affecting positive change. And to some extent, recent history supports this critique. Years after the women's marches and vagina hats, reproductive choice is under threat in new and more immediate ways. Post Standing Rock, more pipelines have been built, including the Dakota Access Pipeline. Flint, Michigan, and a growing number of primarily black communities still face water crises. More and more restrictive legislation has been enacted to deny rights to trans people despite the increased visibility of pride.
Let's go back.
Growing number of more pipelines have been built, including the Dakota Access Pipeline. Flint, Michigan, and a growing number of primarily black communities still face water crises. More and more restrictive legislation has been enacted to deny rights to trans people despite the increased visibility of pride.
So it's kind of like, what the fuck is that shit doing? It's not doing shit. Also, I wonder if they talk about, we're going to keep watching, but I wonder if they talk about things like the people who started Black Lives Matter and how they used the clicktivism, the slacktivism, as a way to just steal money from people.
Of George Floyd, defunding or decreasing funding to the police became a rallying cry online, and it seemed to catch on. For a time in 2020, polls showed that black people, young people, and Democrats were more in favor of cutting police spending than increasing it. By 2021, however, that had flipped. President Joe Biden spoke out, saying that the police should actually be given even more money. Polls show that most Americans now agree. Online activism can make it seem like everyone agrees about certain causes, and that change is imminent, even if the broader social consensus remains the same. And many of online activism's biggest success stories have pretty limited scope. Things like Me Too may have changed the entertainment industry, as have calls for equal pay between male and female co-stars.
See, I hate that shit. Equal pay, Bruh, if an actor is bigger than the other actor, the biggest actor is gonna get the highest pay. Shut the fuck up, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shit's so aggravating, bro.
But that hasn't coincided with a huge shift in the workplace at large. Most people say workplace culture has improved, but only minimally. In a Harvard Business Review survey, most people say workplace culture
language, jokes, and teasing the most common workplace harassment.
Has improved, but only minimally. In a Harvard Business Review survey, only 16% of women and 14% of men said their workplace had actually implemented new policies, procedures, or systems that make it easier for people to speak up about sexual harassment. A good chunk of respondents also reported they or someone they knew had been harassed in the workplace since these movements began. And then there's the 65% of the men surveyed who reported feeling less safe to mentor and coach people of the opposite sex. So
yes, because there are people who misinterpret little things, right? And we all know people do this. Girls do this. We all know this, bro. They misinterpret little things as something else, and they try to make something crazy out of it. And that's why men don't feel comfortable doing this shit. And that's why in that video, when we talk about shit like that, what did that lady say? I want men. I like that terror. I want men to be afraid because you're a dirty, evil man. Like, bro. Yo, this shit is crazy, bro.
Brought by Me Too seem mostly to be about men feeling more afraid of getting in trouble than they were before, rather than increased institutional support or a change in mindset. So what went wrong? Before we dive in, I wanted to quickly let you know about our Patreon.
Shut up.
And we review that. Building off problems is the illusion that the internet functions as a truly public space. Building off of philosopher Jürgen Habermas's idea of the bourgeois public sphere, many look at social media as a place where groups who are often marginalized by society can both withdraw from and push back against dominant narratives. In reality, though, we don't own these online spaces, and they're heavily manipulated by those who do. A problem faced by pre-internet activists was getting the attention of the journalism establishment, which mediated their message and channeled it to the public. Initially, internet activism seemed like a way to bypass these forces, giving people an unmediated voice that cost nothing more than a hosting fee. But today, with social media being largely free, the price we pay is being advertised to, subjected to the algorithms that filter content, being under constant surveillance, subject to the whims of billionaire CEOs in hugely under-regulated terrain. This has consequences. As anthropologist Ronald Neeson put it, technology has become both a remedy for the most insidious crimes against humanity and a vehicle for their perpetration.
Yep.
While we might be freely creating
That's facts.
content online, the owners of the platforms we're creating on bear little responsibility for anything that might be posted there. That's opposed to, say, the way a TV network would be in huge trouble if one of their sitcoms promoted anti-Semitism. In other words, while social media gives us the appearance of a free public square, in reality, it is the ultimate private space, owned and controlled with little to no transparency as to how leadership operates or makes decisions. Unlike, say, traditional media, which is
a lot of times YouTube or even TikTok, they'll take something down to give you a strike or whatever, and the reason for it won't even be specified. It'd be something, or the reason has nothing to do with anything that was in your video or your content. It can be kind of crazy, bro. Because there's so many different people behind the scenes with different agendas and different biases. How do you regulate that?
Least beholden to some government regulation and public accountability. What's more, a big hindrance to online activism is that social justice movements can be co-opted by the very corporations often causing harm. And they can pay for the advertising to get their initiatives spread far and wide, squashing activists and organizations fighting for changes that would negatively impact the corporations. Sometimes brands...
this Pepsi commercial crazy, but just like Nike want to talk about equality and all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, who is making most of their products? Little Chinese boys and girls in sweatshops in China. They don't want to talk about that. No, because it goes against their narrative.
Simply co-opt the language and imagery of activist causes, like the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial. While this particular case was laughably ineffective, other corporations are more successful at making consumers think that buying their product means supporting activist causes. For example, a whopping 63% of people surveyed in a public relations poll said they expected brands that made statements about the murder of George Floyd to follow up with action. And yet, as diversity...
Gushers, Blacks Matter, and so do Black voices. We just said we have a long... It's pointed out words, master actions, more to come. Okay.
Consultant Pepper Miller argues the corporate response can feel a bit toothless when it comes to fighting for racial equality. After all, only 4 out of 500 of America's biggest companies have a black CEO. Sheesh. As Miller told the BBC, companies need to draw long-term plans for social inclusion and racial equality that go beyond them saying that they stand with black people. Experience, however, tells me that's not the case. Most initiatives are one-offs. Other times, activist branding by corporations is blatantly hypocritical. Disney publicly celebrated the inclusiveness of Pride while internally donating money to Florida politicians who oppose queer rights. To any Disney fans who are watching, waiting for me to say something negative about Disney, you got me. And in the worst cases, brands and corporations supposedly engaging in activism are actually harming the causes they claim to champion while distracting from sincere activist efforts. Take oil companies. BP, aka British Petroleum, first popularized the term carbon footprint in the early 2000s, and in 2004 introduced an online carbon footprint calculator to show how we're each contributing to the climate catastrophe. It'd be like if Jeffrey Dahmer made an online quiz called, "Are you potentially a murderer?" But individual actions in the grand scheme of things...
Does just show you how these corporations, they're hypocrites, bro. It just is what it is, because business comes first, money comes first, and yet they'll try to trick you into thinking that they're helping solve whatever problem. No, bruh. But a lot of people fall for that shit every day because people are stupid. You know what I mean? It is what it is, bro.
Not largely responsible for our ever-heating planet. Indeed, as of 2019, a mere 20 corporations were found responsible for more than 1/3 of modern greenhouse gas emissions. This was arguably propaganda disguised as activism, shifting the blame from fossil fuel companies exploiting our natural resources onto everyday consumers. Now, a cottage industry of eco-friendly influencers is cropped up with tips on how we too can tackle climate change with our daily habits because it's our fault. And while we are all for reducing...
That's like imagine an ant pile. That's like imagine an ant pile, right? And to stop the ant pile, you can only... each person, to dismantle the ant pile, each person can take off 1 grain of dirt off the ant pile to stop the ant pile. So we all have to do it, right? Meanwhile, another person, that represents corporation, is pummeling dirt onto it. They're the ones bringing the most dirt. not us, right? They're the ones that's making the more. Okay, hold on. Let me give you a different analogy, because that was terrible. Imagine, fuck. Imagine the kitchen, right? There's two people in the kitchen. I only use the kitchen to use to use the blender, right? So I only make the blender dirty, and I clean after. Meanwhile, the other person uses the stove, the dishwasher, the dishes, and they leave it dirty. I'm only using the blender, but you're pushing it, saying that I have to lower my usage of the blender to keep the kitchen more clean when you're the one that's dirty in the whole kitchen. You dig what I'm saying? Yeah, that's a better analogy.
And taking social responsibility, making good consumer choices is really just a fraction of the battle. And as we've learned, it typically takes people putting their bodies and livelihoods in harm's way to attract enough attention and political will to make meaningful change possible. But the problem isn't just brands telling us we can shop our way to freedom or a healthier planet. A good chunk of the issue is with us. Internet outrage and opinions move really fast, and effective activism is often slow and laborious. And it's not going to give you a dopamine hit. Whether it's Ukrainian flags on our profiles, outrage at the treatment of Palestinians, or circulating body cam footage of the latest civilian shot by police, we've all become experts at getting quickly riled up about an injustice with no clear goal as to what we're demanding and from whom.
And that's why I say, with all these, everything that comes out, right? Every tragedy, every tragic piece of news that comes out, people are just looking for a reason to be mad, a reason to be upset, a reason to be angry, and get some quick likes, quick views, or whatever on social media. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, it don't matter, bro. Because they know people get upset, and then people move on. That's the reality, bro. That's the reality of how this shit work. Because, okay, free Palestine, free Palestine. What the fuck can I do aside from say free Palestine? What can I do except put a hashtag? I can't go over there. I'm not Superman. I'm not about to put on my cape and fly over there and fucking stop a complicated political war. No. So at the end of the day, it's just to make niggas feel good. And that's why a lot of liberal people, liberal activist types, they feed off of that to make it seem like they're good people. Oh yeah, see, I care about the world, I care about everything. See, trust me, I care about you. Whole time you don't fucking care. There's nothing you can even do about it. Let's keep going.
Sure, the occasional wayward Karen or Chad loses their job for saying or doing something blatantly racist in broad daylight. Or Kanye gets locked out of his social media accounts for going anti-Semite on Maine. But bursts of outrage, quickly forgotten, can only take a cause so far. It was a full decade between Brown v. Board and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, with a good century of activism behind it. Women spent decades...
Yeah, because with those, the difference between the activism back then and activism today is that there are specific goals back then. We want to get this bill passed. Boom. We want to get integration. Boom. We want to get equal funding and for black equal not education, equal funding for black students and white students. Boom. We want to get the right to vote passed for women. Boom. Women's suffrage. Boom. Now it's just women's rights, trans rights, black rights. What rights? What are you talking about? Be specific. You can't.
Campaigning for the right to vote and ongoing battles for equality rage on. But the internet has a short memory, and inevitably, all but the most dedicated stop posting and move on. And according to sociologist Dr. Zeynep Tufekci, these types of digital spaces foster communities that are like undifferentiated masses, which end up dissolving because they're simply too big and diffuse to accomplish anything. And to that point, let's be real. We pay a lot of attention to Twitter when it comes to activism and public opinion, but only 23% of American adults use Twitter. And those users tend to skew younger and more progressive. On top of that, 97% of tweets are produced by 25% of users. So what can feel like consensus to the avid Twitter user isn't even on the radar of your next door neighbor or your parents or the kid doing TikTok dances outside your office. Darren, we see
that's facts. So when y'all see a lot of those fucking crazy ass tweets tweeting something like anti-men or whatever bullshit, liberal bullshit, trans, and you see like there's 90-something K likes on it and stuff, you gotta understand, that's only a small amount of people, and most of them shits is bots anyway. Most people in this world do not agree with that shit at all. It's not real, okay? It's skewed. It's skewed, okay? Be for real. So don't let social media warp your perception of reality, because that's what they're trying to do.
Dance. It's not good. Go back to school. On the other hand, there is no evidence to show that liking and sharing causes on social media dampens participation in activism among people who were already inclined to do it. Lots of people hit the retweet button and pat themselves on the back, but those people likely weren't going to be super engaged in the first place. At least they've now spread the word so that folks willing to put their boots on the ground know and can show up. And there are studies that show that people who are deeply engaged with politics online are likely to be politically active in real life, with a correlation between political tweeting and actual civic engagement. So maybe the question isn't whether social media is inherently good or bad for activism. Maybe the real question is, are we using it the right way? And actually, it seems that progressive activists could actually learn something from more conservative activists. Because if the recent surge in the movements to ban the teaching of critical race theory in schools, along with trans athletes from competing in school sports, not to mention the ongoing fight against abortion rights is any indication, right-wing activists are getting things done, as many of these campaigns are being forged largely on places like Twitter and Facebook, even if they might be oppositional to the aims of most progressive activists.
Because there's actual end goal in mind with them shits. These motherfuckers want biological males to play with biological females and think that shit cool. What the fuck? Motherfuckers gonna hurt somebody. I thought y'all cared about women's rights. Crazy shit.
Regardless, the organizational part of social media is hard. It's a great hub or bulletin board, but prone to foster giant movements that have limited ability for change because they're too big, too diffuse, too full of people who don't actually agree on much. And they're being circulated on platforms run by folks whose algorithmic imperative is for you to buy stuff, not protest the structures that keep them powerful. As academic Dean Freelon put it, most truly effective activist movements in the 21st century are multi-pronged. And if we understand social media as just one of many tools in the activist toolbox, while acknowledging that buying Colin Kaepernick branded Nikes and replacing our paper towels with cloth ones isn't going to solve racism or climate change, maybe it'll feel less futile next time you click retweet on the tweet about how a politician is bad.
So, long story short, social media is just a tool in the war. It's not the battlefield, okay? Too many young people who don't have their own, autonomy, you know what I'm saying? They don't have a job or they don't have a car. They live by them. They live with their parents. They don't really be out in the real world. They think that social media is going to align with their political beliefs, and that's what it is. That's what everything should be. But, shit don't line up like that, okay? And you can't just tweet something and think, or post a picture on Instagram and think, oh yeah, you did your part. You didn't do shit. You didn't do nothing. Social media is just a tool. So whatever cause that you're for, use that as a tool. But you really got to be out here too. You know what I'm saying? You got to be out here. And a lot of y'all motherfuckers not out here like that. A nigga like me, I was out here. I experienced the shit for myself. Y'all did not. If y'all want me to do a video talking about my experience with Black Lives Matter, let me know. Because I'll do that. I'll write it out. You know what I'm saying? I'll give y'all my story time type shit. But hey, man, that was the video. Let me know what y'all think about online activism in the 21st century. Does it do anything? Catch you on the next one.